Of all the countless Sonic fan games out there, you've probably heard of one name in particular. No, not that one. Close, but no. What the fuck? Is that even a game? No, stupid! Sonic Before the Sequel. A fantastic fan game created by a Lake Feppard. This game is well known in the Sonic fanbase. It's gotten its fair share of attention in many notable Sonic websites. Countless LPs have been made, and chances are that you've played it already or at least tried it. It's been a while now since the last update of the game, and I've decided to give the game the proper attention and treatment it deserves after all the hard work that went into making it. So let's sit back and relax as we dive into Sonic Before the Sequel. The game is powered by the Sonic Worlds engine, created by Sonic Fangames HQ, specifically for the game-making software of
Multimedia Fusion.
It started as a collaborative project to have people create their own Sonic levels without the hassle of making the engine from scratch. The free engine could be modified to do anything, including fully fledged Sonic fan games. For the most part, the engine is a spot-on replica of the Genesis games. I mean, rolling downhill makes it go faster, jump height is retained when you bounce off enemies, momentum feels almost exactly the same, and it's pretty damn good. The best way I can describe it is that it's as close as good as the Retro engine by Christian Whitehead in Sonic CD. I mean, it's an engine made by fans, how can you go wrong with that? Surely they'll dedicate most of their time to make it work as close as possible to the originals. Right? Right? Huh?
Why is Tails ruined forever?
In this game, however, the engine for some surprising reason runs only at 30 frames per second. Because of this, the gameplay can feel a bit sluggish and floaty at times. The lag just takes away the thrilling sensation of gaining speed and can break the pace of the game. So no matter what type of computer you have, whether it's a gaming machine with i7 capabilities or a simple laptop, it's always going to run at 30 FPS. Which is incredibly odd considering that I've seen and played other fan games that run with the Sonic Worlds engine, and they work perfectly fine for me, at least. Thankfully, after a while you get used to the lag, even if you don't want to, because the gameplay itself and level design just makes up for it. The stages are what makes this game shine. They come action-packed with unique visuals and gimmicks that makes them stand out from each other. Sure, we get the normal loops, strings, and spikes, but for a fan game, it's not bad at all. Usually fan games have badly designed blocky platforming that just feels out of place for Sonic, mainly because of the lack of skill from the developer. I mean, they're called fan games for a reason, no? Games made by people for fun to pay a tribute to Sonic. Luckily, Lake had the best insight and skills to find the perfect balance of platforming and speed so the stages could feel decent. Maybe even above average. However, there are times where the level design just gets too linear for my taste. Seriously, there's times where I'm running for almost an entire minute just holding left and right. Luckily, these sections are temporary since it's never overused to the point that it makes the stage easy. If you play the classics, then there's nothing new or out of the ordinary with the mechanics or controls for Sonic and Tails. This game, however, brings in the super peel-out, but I get the super part, but where's the peel-out? Sonic is basically just doing his running animation on the spot without the figure 8 illusion, and this version needs some tapping on the button to work. Why? Well, the whole point of the peel-out was to showcase that badass animation and be able to pick up top speed faster than the spin dash. It was way more reliable before. It doesn't really do anything different except keeping you out of your ball form and making you susceptible to hits. I rarely use it, so you're better off just spin dashing. Sonic Before the Sequel, as the name suggests, takes place in between the events of Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. It works as an arc or bridge to fill the gap to important plot elements left over from Sonic 1, like where was the 7 Chaos Emerald, the creation of the Death Egg, and how exactly did Sonic meet Tails. If you want to include the Sonic 2 version from the manual, then be my guest, but obviously this version actually does a better job. That itself is a pretty clever and proper premise for a game, especially for Sonic. Usually, fan games want to continue the continuity with new enemies and over-the-top villains and such. But having to associate the story with the classic games directly was a pretty smart move on Lake's part, especially when it's very well written the way he did it. There's tons of scenarios and continuity explaining how these two came to be what they are now, but none of them were expanded in depth to this magnitude to a fully fledged game. There's proper character development and well-placed symbolism. You actually get to respect Tails as a character now. There's cutscenes that are beautifully animated with Macromedia Flash, I assume. For medium and wide-angle shots, the characters are represented in their in-game sprites, and for close-ups, they use mugshots taken directly from Sonic CD intro animation. The characters are mute for the entirety of the game, relying heavily on body language and content to express themselves. And it makes more sense here than in Generations, who made classic Sonic mute when all the other classic characters could talk. I mean, what's up with that? For a story told strictly with sprites, this is actually impressive. The animation is very fluid and action-packed. It's one of the few times where sprite animation is done right. It's as good as Super Mario Bros. Z, actually. We start off right from the ending of Sonic 1, with Sonic being teleported for some reason to the first zone of the game. After a few sightseeing, he realizes that Eggman is still up to no good, so it's up to Sonic to stop him to foil his new secret plan. After a few linear parallax scrolling stages, we meet Tails, who becomes curious with Sonic after saving him from some badniks, and follows him inspired. As the game progresses, we switch back and forth from Sonic and Tails' perspective, each one taking their corresponding zone for the story. Along the way, Tails becomes more amazed at Sonic's heroism, and he follows him around with Sonic unbeknownst to the two-tailed fox presence. He continues to keep his focus on Eggman's plan, which becomes more apparent the more you advance in the game. Tails proves to be capable of defending himself during his journey, becoming worthy of being Sonic's sidekick. So after being briefly separated, both heroes reunite up on the Death Egg rocket in a tear-jerking scene and work their way up to the mighty vessel. Hilltop Heights Zone. Basically, it's just Sky Sanctuary and Hilltop Zone mashed together in a blender. Both different settings, but sharing the same blue color. Since it's the first level in the game, it's pretty simplistic with linear rows and loops to get you used to the physics. Not much to say other than it's blue and boring to look at. Star Shore Zone. Tails' epilogue stage. It's your typical forest and palm tree abundant green hill stage of the game. Why wasn't it Sonic to use at the beginning instead is beyond me. Being a Tails stage, we get used a bit to his mechanics. Tails' stages are designed in a way to make best of her flying ability. You use it to easily access the upper path with quick reactions in hard-to-reach places because of your jump height. The gimmick for the stage is, get ready for it, getting high. No, not flying, you dipshit, actual drugs! These fluffy white clouds are puffs. Just float aimlessly on the stage minding their own business. But when you just touch one, the game decides to quit on its dear life and then drinks itself to death. Literally. It's just hilarious to see inappropriate stuff like that in a Sonic game. You gotta give them props with the attention to details with Tails. His sprite is acting weird when it stays still. Oh, and you're just gonna love how the background music gets remixed with dubstep. Seriously though, don't touch these things. The physics get really fucked up and it makes it difficult to see where you're going. Fuck! Rocky Ride Zone. A purple mountain-colored paradise with long linear stretches of roads and catchy upbeat music that gets your blood pumping. Now, to be fair, I think this is one of the intended linear stages in the game. Like the chemical plant for a Sonic game, if you will. It's intended to make you go fast, reach hidden goodies, and use your momentum on these weird floating rocks to reach other paths. But you still have to be really careful when going fast for oncoming projectiles. Especially for those damn floating spikes taken directly from Starlight Zone. Lost Level Zone. A homage zone inspired by the Lost Beta levels of the original Sonic 2. Each act contains aesthetics taken from those zones. Act 1 is a crystallite meth version of Hidden Palace, with gravity-lifting crystals and a few bridges which, oddly enough, don't light up like they're supposed to. Second act is based on Wood Zone, with sawblades and tower blocky structures like the original. And finally, Act 3, which is based on Dust Hill Zone, complete with transitioning backgrounds with desert and ice-cold climates. Also, you just gotta love how the music transitions from heavy rock metal to soft and smooth synthesizers. Each act pretty much gives a different experience for the zone, so technically there's 3 zones in one? Not bad. Oh yeah, almost forgot. There's these little enemies in the zone that are worth noting. Little turtles doing Street Fighter moves. That is just adorable. But be forewarned, the size and range of these little ones can make them hard to distinguish from the background. So, needless to say that they can be very annoying. Sunset Star Zone. A jazzy night zone filled with tall skyscrapers, twinkling stars, and annoying as fuck enemies like a ninja star Orbinaut that, just like its predecessors, cannot be killed. The stage is pretty simple in design with a few Metropolis corkscrews every now and then. This stage, however, contains what I think to be one of the stupidest gimmicks I've ever seen for a Sonic game. You see, somewhere half through the Act 2, you're enclosed in this small room that looks like a stadium of sorts, where your goal is to collect stars while jumping on small gray hard-to-see platforms. And I'll let you guys know, I fucking hate this gimmick. Seriously? Get the fucking stars? You'll be seeing stars when you're done with this level. For starters, there's like 7 of these fuckers you have to collect, which is like a little too much. Also, the area on the floor is roaming with a few cars passing by, and if you fall, cause believe me, with small platforms like these, I assure you, you will fall down. You're going to get hit. For some unexplained reason, the recoil sends you flying extremely high, and sometimes by the time you touch the ground, you get hit by a fucking car. Again! Sonic's physics are just not meant for this type of blocky platforming. Half the stage, you're running and spinning through giant loops, so going to a screeching halt for this platforming mess just breaks the flow of the gameplay. Metro Madness Zone, a subway station. Why? I really don't know. In fact, there's nothing train-related other than the title and a few trains in the background. Not even a train or cart gimmicks of any sort. Strange. Anyhow, there are a few fans you have to hover over as tails and use your invisible gust of wind to blow the device and make some of the floors open to access the next path. Occasionally, you'll encounter a random laser puzzle where you have to push a button on the floor on the right time to take shots at a moving switch of sorts. Fluid Fortress Zone. Get this. The stage completely underwater and no air bubbles. Ah, but there's a catch. You're equipped with this interesting variation of the bubble shield that is indestructible and it gives you a double jump, rather than a bounce, as it should. But let me tell ya, even if you can't drown in this zone, you'll still feel as frustrated and annoyed here as with any water level in a Sonic game. For starters, since you're underwater the whole time, you get crappy slow physics with floaty jumps, and for a game that runs on 30 frames per second, it's really slow. I like the idea of the concept, and while you still enjoy playing the stage, regardless, it's still annoying, especially with tedious jumps that require a double jump. You'd think that with such a useful ability, it would make things easier, but the water physics just make platforming tedious, and it doesn't help that the double jump doesn't go as high as the electric shield. The zone has a few subtle references though to Hydra City and Labyrinth Zone, with automatic water currents where you have to press up and down to avoid spikes. I frankly dislike some of these because they require a bit of memorizing to get through. Perilous Paradise Zone, the filler zone of the game, since the stage itself has no significance to the plot whatsoever. It's just there. Barely any fun or memorable gimmicks or scenarios. Well, if you want to include drowning all the time here because of some stupid air bubble glitch, then be my fucking guest! What is this place anyway? Biodome of sorts? I'm guessing this is where Eggman mass produces one of those pot clouds that makes you feel trippy and sell it to the highest bidder. Huh, think about it. Where else can he get funds for his contraptions? Titanic Tower Zone. Eggman's launch base for the Death Egg. As the name implies it's a gigantic tower you need to work your way up for the climax of the game. This stage is packed with a lot of things to do. Swinging platforms, running up walls, and giant rotating Marble Garden SK wheels to open paths. There's also this dark room gimmick where you flip a switch to advance and it darkens the area until you reach a checkpoint. There's really no point to this. I mean, I can still see where I'm going fine, so there's no difference whatsoever. Cloudy Crowd Zone. Tells a self-discovery moment when he becomes Sonic's agile sidekick after following him around during the half of the game. Here, Miles learns to use his tails to propel himself faster instead of jerkily running around like he used to because clouds can't seem to hold his footsteps properly. That's weird. I mean, he's capable to stand on the damn thing without falling through it, but I digress. Being Tails' final fully playable stage, it's packed with lots of things to do and it doesn't disappoint. The atmosphere of this stage is especially worth noting since the rich music in the background just contributes for the build-up of the climax of the game and the tension of the level. There's also one gimmick in particular that doesn't belong in the stage. There are a few platforms where if you stand on them long enough, they'll burst with fire. It doesn't look like something you expect to see in a cloudy paradise like this, but it worked for the most part. Death Egg Zone. No longer an area with 2 small rooms, the Death Egg in this version is a full 3-act zone. However, unlike the Sonic & Knuckles counterpart, this stage actually brings more variety and originality. I present to you the Speed Booster gimmick. Probably one of the best thought out gimmicks of the game. Each speed booster is color-coded in red, green, and cyan. All speed boosters, while propelling you in their direction, come with special abilities. The green ones give you a higher moon jump, Cyan ones reverse gravity for platforming hazards, and finally, the red ones, which turn Sonic into a blasting blue fireball from hell that blows up blocks to advance. It also increases your gravity, making you stick to the floor, so be careful until it wears out. While it may share some aesthetic similarities with its predecessors, the overall design of the stage makes it a unique new experience from the others. Miles better than the Sonic 4 Episode 2 version, I'll tell you that. Graphically speaking, the game borrows many aesthetics from other classic Sonic games. Like most fan-made projects, the creators lack proper funds for pixel artists to create new textures and graphics from scratch. While some of the scenery looks the same, the graphics are heavily edited in a way that makes them feel different and new. Heck, even the enemies are the same. However, their gimmicks and attacks were completely changed and reimagined to behave like brand new ones. Motobugs are faster and deadlier, caterpillars make you levitate in the wrong way, Hamimuzis that engulf themselves in electricity, Spinies they make you bounce, and Slicers that
So much trouble you gave me in Metropolis. And now you come to haunt me. Why? Oh, God.
Actually, these slicers just move their blades slowly in front of them with psychokinesis. They're not really threatening at all. You just gotta love how if you stand behind them, they panic in fear like saying, "Oh shit, I'm screwed."
Fear me, Tails, as I slowly sway away my slicers of doom! Oh, wow. Listen, about Metropolis.
No, wait, stop!
Most of the scenery, however, is original on its own. Some enemies were made from scratch specifically for this game, although I'm not sure about their names though. To be fair, the custom graphics done in these enemies and bosses look bad. They seem to be missing a few shading layers to look more Genesis-like, and the design is just alright goofy. They really just look like robot rejects from Roly Poly Oly. Sonic's game sprites were custom made with fluid nice cute animations that complement his abilities nicely. I wish I could say the same for Tails though, since he uses Sonic 2 sprites with a different palette. Early in the first release of the game, the soundtrack consisted of stock music from other Sonic games, and a shit ton of Kirby music, some of which was left in for the cutscenes. Later, however, in the 2012 re-release, the game, apart from sporting new updated graphics, came complete with a brand new soundtrack. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys here. The music in this game is fantastic. The best OST for any Sonic game ever made. The music was composed by Bad Falk, who you may remember from the Unleashed porting project, White World themes, and the infamous Be Cool, Be Wild remix. Falk is a really talented composer. His first priority of the game was to make atmospheric music that could complement the ambient of the stage. Needless to say, it enriches the experience. You see a mountain, then we get trumpet and sax like Ice Cap from Sonic Adventure. You see a palm tree, then we listen to Caribbean chiptunes and such, and so on and so forth. He nails the feel for every stage with each following track. He understands the feeling and the way the stage works. There's also tons of nods and homages to other Sonic game tracks included in the OST. Some may not come across as obvious though. The variety of genres that are included is quite riveting. From a tropical note piece, we move all the way to a starry night with sexy 80s style music. Alright! And let's not forget those other talented composers that had their share of cool tracks in the game. There's Funk Fiction, Restart, and KGZ. Now, I'm sorry that I can't elaborate more on you guys since I've never heard any of the other work before, but for the most part, you guys did a very good job and are worth mentioning. Seriously guys, good job. Now, I'm not kidding on this one, but the soundtrack was so good that KGZ got an email from John... this guy, praising the music. Holy... It takes fucking real talent to get someone from Sega like John Singer to email you and compliment your work. Even if you haven't played this game, I highly recommend you listen to some of these tracks. Seriously, you won't be disappointed. The boss battles for each stage follows two distinctive styles for Sonic and Tails. Sonic's bosses consist of chasing a giant Eggman vehicle, whether it's on water or land, and timing your jumps to hit its weak spots. Sometimes even working your way up the occasional platform or bouncing projectiles back at him. Now, Sonic's bosses are a real letdown. I know that he's all about speed, but having the same repetitive boss formula is really unengaging. Like, really? You're running the whole time? Why? His controls are kind of wonky in these bosses. I swear, sometimes he's jumping or losing game momentum at its own will, causing you to take hits at the worst moments. Tails' bosses are the best of the bunch. Instead of following the same style, each one of Tails' bosses is a different platforming experience. They mostly take good advantage of Tails' flight ability and have tons of specific goals, making them gimmicky. Like timing the 3 switches to shoot a laser at the enemy. Lake even recreated the Rotortron boss battle from Sonic Colors, and it's actually more enjoyable this time, since you have actual physics to work with and it's rather challenging for Tails. On a side note, the music for this boss was left untouched. Why? I don't know, but it does make the battle much more intense, considering that we can hear the entire Rotortron track now, unlike in Colors because of how fast and easy that boss was. So after finally reaching the death deck, Sonic and Tails work their way up to the final boss, where they encounter Eggman, wearing a special battle armor designed specifically for Sonic. After mercilessly tossing Tails off the harbor of the zone, he squares things off with Sonic. Surprisingly, while he's not in a giant mechanical robot of sorts, for a boss battle, the battle armor is a formidable fight. Eggman starts teleporting relentlessly around the stage, and every once in a while he'll stop to charge and shoot his laser arm, or disperse vast amounts of spikes, which are really hard to avoid by the way. He'll also engulf himself in electricity after being hit, so be careful and stay away when necessary. Seriously, every single ring here counts! Alright, so there's Sonic skydiving to the planet. And he loses the emeralds as usual. He looks at it and... Wait, what? Whoa. Oh! New feature in the re-release is the secret final boss battle. If you got enough time points, you'll access the good ending of the game, where Sonic, after recovering the 7th Chaos Emerald, becomes Super Sonic and chases after Eggman to finish things off once and for all.
And it's fucking awesome!
It controls in a Doomsday Zone SK fashion, flying around the screen where you have to ram yourself at Eggman and avoid projectiles and collect rings. The music playing in this stage is amazing. It's much more epic than Doomsday and Solaris Phase 2. Yeah, I just fucking said that.
Come at me, bro!
I gotta tell ya, your rings seem to consume faster here because of how scarce there are, and you're immersed in the action, then you'll forget about them. And when you get paralyzed, it doesn't help a bit. Alright, time to finish this fucker up once and for all. So after beating the boss, Sonic loses the emeralds and returns back to normal as he skyfalls his way down to the planet where he's caught by Tails on the nick of time. They both descend to Emerald Hill Zone where they resume their adventures in what we know as Sonic the Hedgehog 2. As the ending credits roll, we're greeted to an animated slideshow of every stage in the game, akin to Sonic CD's ending, and a lovely song composed by, excuse me if I mispronounce this, Yuri Matsuda, and performed by, again, excuse me, Ai Ichikawa. Now how awesome is that? They actually went to the trouble of composing a unique song for the game. A fan game for that matter. If that's not dedication at its best, then I don't know what is. To this day, there isn't a full version of the song released, so I asked the composer who's viewing this, please do. It's a wonderful song that deserves to be shared with everyone. Since a lot of work and love went into making it, it's only reasonable that it deserves better praise. So, how does Sonic before the sequel hold up? Well, what do you think? It's perfect! The game has tons of replay value with the stages. Each zone is filled with their own well-planned gimmicks, not to mention that their concepts are very original, and the music is just great. It's atmospheric, and it immerses you deeply in the game setting to the correct tone and mood for a stage. For a fan game, it's a really exceptional work. It's obvious that a lot of love went into making this, from the story all the way down to the cutscenes and gameplay. It really feels like a Sega game on its own. And to be honest guys, to me, this is the real Sonic 4. Well, at least how it should have been approached. I mean, think about it. The story is a perfect excuse to revisit the classic series, and it ties up all the knots in the plot, and it just does what all good sequels should do, which is taking the original gameplay we know and love and expand way beyond that. There's lots of initiative and originality oozing from this game, and it's only limited because it's a fan game. So stuff like edited graphics and similar concepts are excusable, because the principle of originality is still in there. Sonic Before the Sequel is an awesome game that you should check out. If you're an ambitious Sonic fan and haven't played this game, then what the fuck is wrong with you? Seriously, what the fuck? It's a wonderful game, and I'm glad to say that the new sequel is on the way, conveniently titled Sonic After the Sequel. Of course, as we all know, Sonic 3 took place right after Sonic 2, as seen in the intro, but I digress. For what I've seen so far, After the Sequel brings a ton of new content and fixes a lot of the problems I had previously, graphically and gameplay-wise. And I really can't wait for what the composers have in store for us. I mean, have you heard some of the tracks yet? Blake, Falk, KGZ, and all you wonderful singers and composers, thank you for bringing back the old classic Sonic experience.